Welcome to the More Time, More Money, and More Wealth mini podcast for business owners brought to you by Wow Advisors Group. This podcast is dedicated to business owners who would like to work smarter and not harder, earn significantly more income, and create astonishing wealth. Now, let me introduce you to our host today, Hitesh Mohanlal.
Hello, and welcome to podcast number 14 on how to work less, earn more, and build unbelievable wealth for business owners. Today, again, a slightly different background. I know last time round I was on holiday and we had to do a podcast where I was. That was due to a technical issue. This time round, my team just called me and said, while I was here on holiday, and said, look, we need to do a podcast. Can you please record one? And I think they just did that just to upset my holiday. But here I am. I'm actually in Fiji for a week and a half, just for some relaxation and recovery, really, after that rather busy tax season we have just had. But today, I would like to talk about financial freedom, because there's a lot of misconceptions about financial freedom and what it means. And everybody has this pie in the sky idea of what financial freedom is. So I just wanted to talk about the levels of financial freedom and what actually financial freedom means for you. Okay, so you can speak to someone and they will tell you having $50 in their wallet is the equivalent of financial freedom for them. You can speak to somebody else and they'll say, I have to have $1 million of alternative income, and if I don't consider myself financially free. Which one's right and which one's wrong? Well, to a certain extent, they're both right, because it depends on how you feel and what financial freedom means for you. The problem is we come from an era where social media is around. We have a whole bunch of A-listers and other people around who project all this wealth and project all these expenses, and we think that is the only part of financial freedom. And we look at it and our brain says, nah, you're never going to get there. And because our brain says you're never going to get there, it's kind of like, well, why should I bother and why should I try? Because I'm never going to get there. Okay. And what tends to happen is, if you start believing you're never going to get there, you're never going to take the steps which are required to at least get you part way through there. Okay. So what you need to understand is, when it comes to financial freedom, there's not one definition. There's a few definitions of what is financial freedom. Okay. So if you want financial freedom, don't look at the David Beckham lifestyle, because the David Beckham lifestyle is all about private jets and yachts and things like that. Okay. For us, it's going to be a bit hard to get in that place. So don't even kind of really think of that place just yet. Doesn't mean you can't get there, it just means you're not there yet. You haven't built the stepping stones. Okay. And this is what I'm going to say to you. If you've ever played a video game and you start at level 4, what's going to happen? You've never played the game before. You start at level 4 and all of a sudden you're dead. And the reason you're dead is because you haven't gone through the earlier levels and you haven't learned how to play the game. And getting financial freedom is the same thing. If you end up trying to think you're going to get this David Beckham lifestyle, you're never going to get to David Beckham lifestyle. You're going to be dead before you even get anywhere near it. And the reason is because you haven't gone through that process. Okay. And I ignore about the beeping at the side. There's a van over there, so apologies for that. But you have to go through the process. Okay. Because if you don't go through the process, you're not going to get there. And you know what? David Beckham went through the same process. Okay. He didn't just wake up one morning and end up in private charter plane territory. He started off playing football. Okay. And when he started off, he was not earning mega millions of dollars. Okay. So what are these levels? And I have 4 basic levels of financial freedom. Okay. And the earlier ones, believe it or not, are actually the hardest ones to get, but you have to start there. Okay. So the first one is basic financial security. So what does that mean? That means you have enough alternative income coming from other sources, which can cover your basic survival needs. So this would be, say, accommodation, your electricity costs, your food costs. Okay. So what we're saying is those costs are not necessarily coming out of your salary or your wages. They're coming out from an alternative source of income. And that could be rental income from an investment property. It could be shares. It could be dividends. It could be anything that is not necessarily related to your income. Okay. Now, at this stage, we're not talking about fuel for a BMW or servicing for a BMW or anything like that. We're looking at cars which are in a Kia Hyundai type range situation. All right. So that's number one, basic financial security. Then we have total financial security. So total financial security is where you're covering your basics and you're covering things like entertainment, going out occasionally, that sort of stuff. Okay. Again, not big luxurious stuff. We're not talking Louis Vuitton shoes and all this sort of stuff. No, nothing like that. You're still talking your basic lifestyle, but it's covering more. Okay. So you're covering your days out, your eatings out, your times you spend with your friends, things like that. Okay. So that's level 2. Level 1, absolute basic survival, is covered externally. Number 2 is your basic survival plus your little bit of add-ons and a little bit of luxury. Okay. And they're coming not from your work income, they're coming from an alternative source of income. Now, if you're a young person, you're going to say, well, there's no chance that I'm going to be able to do that. And that's true, because you've got to put a certain amount of money away in investments in order for that basic stuff to be covered. And something like superannuation won't necessarily work because superannuation is locked away. You can't touch it until your retirement. So you've got to build an alternative source of investments in order for that to start happening. And you can do that if you start young. And this is what my recommendation to everybody is. So every child I even come across, any teenager I come across, the first thing I say, put some money aside straight away. And they just look at me in a funny way and think I'm a bit nuts and mad. But this is the reason why. Okay. So third one. Okay. This third one is total financial freedom. This is where your salary income and your alternative income is pretty much the same. And basically what that means is if you give up your job, you can still live your entire lifestyle should you want. Okay. Now you don't get there. That's hard work to get there. But there's lots of people I know who have done that. Okay. There's lots of people that I know who have, and that's basically where we're going into this kind of retirement sort of stage. But it's before retirement. It's before superannuation starts kicking in. All right. Can you get there? Because your superannuation is going to be the excess. All right. But if your superannuation kicks in and you're taking the equivalent of superannuation out as you were working, you are in total financial freedom place. All right. So it's not like you can't cover it. You can use it. You can use alternative income and you can have your super income coming in at the same time, and it will cover your salary income, and you've got total financial freedom. So it's not like it can't be done. It can be done. It's just going to happen slightly later in life. And then the fourth version. Okay. The fourth version is real financial freedom, and that is the David Beckham lifestyle. Do what you want whenever you want. Okay. And that's financial freedom. That's real financial freedom. I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, irrelevant of what it costs. Okay. But even David Beckham he will sit down and say, well, can I afford this? Can I afford that? I've got all these expenses. Can I do it? So he cannot necessarily do whatever he wants. He just has more choices than you and I. Okay. So what I'm going to say to you is, if you want any kind of financial freedom, you're going to have to start somewhere. And the somewhere is that bottom level. And that's the hardest level to cover, because you've got to put money aside And that's going to take some time to start making an impact and start making a change. But as soon as you do that, that's when it becomes lucrative, because when you're getting in later in life, you're using your alternative income, you're using your superannuation income, and you've reached a good level of financial stability and financial freedom. I hope that was useful. Thank you very much. Have a great day.